The smell of sawdust and wood stain had always been my sanctuary, but tonight it felt more like a confessional. I was hunched over my grandfather's workbench at 11:30 p.m., trying to restore a cherry wood dining table that had seen better decades, when I heard Talia's voice drifting through the thin walls of our house. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Of course I won't take his last name. It sounds absolutely cheap, she was saying into her phone, probably to one of her prissy event planning clients. I'd rather be Talia Sloan forever than a Grant for even a second. I set down my sandpaper and listened harder, my jaw tightening. 22 years of marriage, and she was talking about my family name like it was some discount store brand. The whole blue-collar thing was cute when we were young, but honestly, Rebecca, I'm embarrassed to introduce him at events now. Well, that was a knife to the gut wrapped in a pretty bow. Good thing I hadn't bothered embroidering her initials on those anniversary towels I'd been planning. My name is Elias Grant, and I've been building custom furniture in this Rust Belt town for over 2 decades. My father built furniture. His father built furniture, and the Grant name meant something around here. Quality, reliability, craftsmanship that lasted. But apparently, to my wife of 22 years, it just sounded cheap. I stepped closer to the door connecting my workshop to our kitchen, my work boots creaking on the old floorboards. Through the crack, I could see Talia pacing in her silk pajamas, her blonde hair perfectly styled even at this hour. Everything about her screamed expensive maintenance. The weekly salon appointments, the designer clothes, the constant need to be seen at the right places with the right people. Drew thinks I should start my own high-end planning firm, she continued. He says I'm wasting my talent working for someone else. Drew Franklin. My former best friend, now some kind of business coach who drove around town in a flashy Tesla, selling people dreams they couldn't afford. The same Drew who used to come to our barbecues, drink my beer, and tell me what a lucky man I was to have Talia. He's been so supportive through this whole thing, Talia said, her voice dropping to what she probably thought was a whisper. Unlike some people who shall remain nameless. I'd heard enough. I backed away from the door and returned to my workbench, but the cherry table might as well have been made of concrete for all the attention I could give it now. My hands were shaking, not with sadness, but with a cold, calculating anger that I hadn't felt since high school. The next morning, I was up before dawn, making coffee in our kitchen that felt more like a museum than a home. Everything was white and sterile, chosen by Talia to impress her friends. Not a single piece of the furniture I'd made over the years had survived her constant redecorating. You're up early, Talia said, appearing in the doorway in her workout clothes. At 39, she still looked good, and she knew it. I'm meeting Rebecca for yoga, then lunch at that new place downtown. Sounds expensive, I said, not looking up from my coffee. It's called networking, Elias. Some of us are trying to build something. Right, with Drew's help, I'm sure. She paused, and I caught something flickering across her face. Guilt? Annoyance? Hard to tell with Talia. She'd perfected the art of looking bored even during arguments. Drew's a successful businessman. Maybe you could learn something from him. Like what? How to lease a fancy car I can't afford to impress people I don't like? She grabbed her purse and keys. At least he has ambition. At least he's going somewhere in life. After she left, I sat in the kitchen for a long time, staring at the wedding photo on the counter. We looked so young, so happy. I remembered being proud to give her my name, proud to start the Grant family legacy with her. What a joke that turned out to be. My daughter Maddie came downstairs around 9, already dressed for her senior year classes. At 18, she looked more like her mother every day, the same blonde hair, the same dismissive expression when she looked at me. Mom said you were acting weird last night, she said, not bothering with good morning. Define weird. I don't know. Grumpy. More than usual. More than usual. When had I become the grumpy dad, the embarrassment, the one they tolerated rather than loved? Just work stress, I said. She grabbed a granola bar and headed for the door. Whatever, I'm staying at Emma's tonight. We're working on college applications. Which colleges? The kind you can't afford, she said, and I heard her mother's voice in those words. After Maddie left, I walked through our house, really looked at it for the first time in months. Every room told the same story. Talia's taste, Talia's choices, Talia's vision of what our life should look like. The only trace of me was the mortgage payment coming out of my account every month. I spent the day in my workshop, but I couldn't concentrate on anything. My mind kept circling back to that phone conversation, to the casual cruelty in Talia's voice when she talked about my name, my work, my life. Around 3 p.m. I decided to take a drive. No particular destination in mind, just needed to get out of the house. I found myself driving past the Riverside Motel on the edge of town, the kind of place that rented rooms by the hour and didn't ask questions. That's when I saw it. Talia's white BMW parked next to a familiar Tesla. I pulled into the lot and sat in my truck for 10 minutes, engine running, trying to process what I was seeing. Part of me wanted to storm into whatever room they were in and catch them in the act. But a bigger part of me, the part that had been building furniture for 20-plus years, knew that patience and precision always beat rushing into things. I took out my phone and snapped a few pictures of the cars, making sure to get the license plates and the motel sign in the frame. Then I drove home and waited. Talia came back around 6, looking freshly showered and wearing different clothes than she'd left in. She kissed my cheek, and started talking about her lunch with Rebecca, how they'd discussed opening their own event planning business. That's nice, I said. How's Drew doing? Drew? How would I know? I haven't talked to him in weeks. She was good. I had to give her that. If I hadn't seen the cars, hadn't overheard that phone call, I might have believed her. But I had, and I didn't. And something cold and patient was starting to grow in my chest. I'm going to grab a beer with the guys tonight, I said. Probably be late. Fine. I have some client calls to make anyway. I'll bet you do, I thought. Instead of meeting any guys, I drove back to the motel. Both cars were gone, but I talked to the desk clerk, a kid who recognized me from around town. For $50, he confirmed what I already knew. Room 12, registered to Drew Franklin, regular customer for the past 3 months. 3 months. While I was working 16-hour days to pay for her yoga classes and designer purses, she'd been screwing my former best friend in a roadside motel. I sat in my truck in the empty parking lot and felt something shift inside me, like tumblers falling into place in a lock. For 22 years, I'd been the reliable one, the provider, the guy who fixed things and kept quiet and never made waves. I'd let Talia reshape our life to fit her vision, let her push me into the background of my own story. But she'd made one critical mistake. She'd insulted the Grant name. And Grants, as she was about to learn, don't forget things like that. I drove home and went straight to my workshop. But instead of picking up sandpaper or a saw, I opened my laptop and started doing research. Drew Franklin, business coach and motivational speaker. I pulled up his website, his social media, his business registration with the state. Very interesting reading, especially the part about his previous bankruptcy and the complaints filed against his last business venture. By midnight, I had a plan. Not the hot-headed, kick-down-the-door kind of plan that would land me in jail or divorce court. Something more elegant. Something that would hurt them where they lived, in their egos, their reputations, their carefully constructed images. Something worthy of the Grant name. The next few days, I played the perfect, unsuspecting husband. I made coffee in the mornings, asked about Talia's day, even complimented her on a new dress that probably cost more than most people's car payments. But I was watching, listening, gathering information like a craftsman collecting the right tools for a complex job. I started with Drew's social media profiles. The man was practically writing my revenge plan for me, posting photos of expensive dinners, luxury hotel stays, and motivational quotes about living your best life and surrounding yourself with quality people. His Instagram was a masterclass in fake-it-till-you-make-it lifestyle porn. What was really interesting was comparing his posts to his actual business filings. Drew Franklin Consulting LLC had been operating at a loss for 2 years running. The Tesla? Leased. The downtown loft apartment? Month-to-month rental? The expensive dinners? Probably going on credit cards that were already maxed out. My wife was having an affair with a broke con artist who was better at Instagram than accounting. On Thursday morning, I decided to test a theory. I was in the kitchen when Talia came down, already dressed for another networking lunch. "Meeting Rebecca again?" I asked. "Actually, I'm having lunch with a potential new client. Big wedding next spring, the kind of event that could really put me on the map." "That's great. Where are you meeting?" She hesitated for just a fraction of a second. "The Riverside Bistro." The Riverside Bistro had been closed for renovations for 3 weeks. I'd driven past it yesterday, windows papered over, construction equipment in the parking lot. "Sounds fancy," I said. "It is. This client has very sophisticated tastes." "I'll bet he does," I thought. After she left, I called my buddy Mike at the boxing gym downtown. Mike had been trying to get me back into training for months, said I needed an outlet for stress. Turned out he was right, just not in the way he'd expected. "Eli, about time you came to your senses. You look like you haven't slept in a week." "Feel like it too. When can I start?" "How about right now? I've got the heavy bag free and you look like you need to hit something." He wasn't wrong. I spent an hour working out 22 years of frustration on that bag, and by the time I was done, my head was clearer than it had been in months. Mike watched me work, occasionally offering technique tips, but mostly just letting me burn off steam. "Whatever's eating at you," he said as I unwrapped my hands, "you're handling it better than most guys would." "What makes you think something's eating at me?" "Eli, I've known you since high school. You don't show up here throwing punches like your life depends on it because everything's peachy at home." Mike had been a good friend back in the day, before marriage and kids and careers pulled us in different directions. He'd never liked Talia much, said she was too high maintenance, but he'd kept his opinions to himself out of loyalty to me. "Hypothetically," I said, "if a guy found out his wife was cheating on him, what would you tell him to do?" Mike stopped wiping down equipment and looked at me hard. "Hypothetically? Hypothetically. I'd tell him to get a good lawyer and document everything, and I'd tell him not to do anything stupid while he was angry." Define stupid. Anything that lands him in jail, costs him his kids, or gives her ammunition in divorce court? Smart advice. But I wasn't planning on doing anything stupid. I was planning on doing something smart, calculated, and devastatingly effective. That afternoon, I made a few phone calls. First to my lawyer, Tom Mitchell, who'd handled my business paperwork for years. Then to my accountant. Then to a private investigator I'd found online who specialized in what he called discrete documentation services. By 5 p.m., I had a clear picture of my options and a timeline for implementing them. The PI would handle getting official documentation of the affair, photos, hotel records, the kind of evidence that would hold up in court. Tom would start preparing divorce papers and protecting my business assets, and I would handle the more creative aspects of my revenge. I was in my workshop that evening, actually managing to focus on a cabinet restoration, when I heard a car pull into the driveway. Through the window, I saw Drew's Tesla parked behind Talia's BMW. This was new. They'd never been bold enough to bring their affair to my house before. I crept to the door and listened. They were in the living room, talking in low voices. "Can't keep meeting at that motel," Talia was saying. "It's so tacky." "My place, then. The loft has better security anyway." "What if someone sees me? This town is so small, everyone knows everyone." "So what? You're getting divorced anyway, right? You said you were done with the whole suburban housewife thing." There was a pause, then Talia's voice, harder now. I need to be careful about the timing. Elias might seem like a pushover, but he's not stupid. If he thinks I'm planning to leave him, he might try to hide assets or something. What assets? The guy makes furniture. He makes more than you think. And there's the house, the workshop, his client list. I'm not walking away from 22 years of marriage with nothing. Drew laughed. Don't worry about it. I've got connections, people who can help you get what you deserve. By the time we're done, old Eli won't know what hit him. Old Eli. In my own house, talking about dividing up my life like it was a garage sale. I heard footsteps moving toward the stairs, toward my bedroom, and something snapped inside me. Not the hot, destructive kind of snap that makes you do something you'll regret. The cold, focused kind that makes you see everything with perfect clarity. I walked out of my workshop and into the living room just as they reached the bottom of the stairs. "Hey, Drew," I said casually. "Funny running into you here." They both froze. Talia recovered first, her face shifting into what I'd learned to recognize as her dealing with difficult clients expression. "Elias, you scared us. Drew just stopped by to discuss some business opportunities." "In our bedroom?" Drew stepped forward, all fake confidence and expensive cologne. "Actually, Eli, we were just getting comfortable in my house while you plan how to screw me over?" The pretense dropped from Talia's face. "You were listening." "In my own house?" "Yeah, I was listening. Interesting conversation, especially the part about my assets and what you deserve." Drew tried to put himself between us, like he was protecting Talia from me. "Look, man, I know this is awkward, but—" "Awkward?" I laughed, and it didn't sound like a pleasant sound. "Drew, you're screwing my wife in roadside motels and planning to help her take me for everything I've worked for, and you think it's awkward? Now wait just a minute. No, you wait." I stepped closer, and I was pleased to see him back up a step. "You're going to get out of my house. Both of you are going to think very carefully about what happens next. Because I've been the nice guy for 22 years, and it's gotten me a cheating wife and a backstabbing friend." "You can't throw me out of my own house," Talia said. "Watch me." I pulled out my phone. "Tom Mitchell's number is right here. One call, and we start divorce proceedings tonight. Is that what you want?" They looked at each other, some kind of silent communication passing between them. "This isn't over," Drew said. "You're right about that." After they left, I sat in my living room and felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Complete clarity about what I needed to do. I called the PI and moved up our timeline. I called Tom and told him to expedite the paperwork. And then I called Mike at the gym. "Remember that conversation we had about not doing anything stupid? Yeah? I'm going to need you to help me do some very smart things instead." The private investigator, Janet Walsh, was nothing like what I'd expected. Instead of some grizzled ex-cop with a drinking problem, she was a sharp-dressed woman in her 40s who ran her operation like a Fortune 500 company. Her office was downtown above a coffee shop, and her rates were reasonable for what she called comprehensive documentation services. "Mr. Grant," she said, reviewing the file she'd already started on my case, "I have to ask, are you sure you want to go this route? Once we start pulling threads, things tend to unravel quickly." "I'm sure. Because in my experience, most people think they want to know everything, but they really don't. Sometimes ignorance is easier to live with than truth." I thought about that for a moment. "Janet, my wife told me my family name sounds cheap. She's planning to take half of everything I've built while screwing my former best friend in motel rooms. I'm pretty sure I can handle whatever truth you dig up." She smiled. "Fair enough. Give me a week." She didn't need a week. 3 days later, she called with an update that was better than I'd hoped for. "Your wife and Mr. Franklin have been meeting at the Riverside Motel twice a week for 4 months, she said. "I have photos, credit card records, and a statement from the desk clerk. But that's not the interesting part." "What's the interesting part?" "Drew Franklin isn't just broke. He's in serious financial trouble. 3 maxed-out credit cards, 2 months behind on his car lease, and the IRS has a lien on his business for unpaid taxes. He's been using his business coaching as a front to borrow money from clients. How much money? At least $50,000 that I can document. Probably more. He tells people he's investing it in high-return opportunities, but it's really going to pay his bills and maintain his lifestyle. Are any of his clients my wife's friends? Funny you should ask. Rebecca Morrison, I believe she's your wife's business partner, gave him $15,000 last month. Rebecca Morrison, Talia's best friend and co-conspirator in the event planning business. The same Rebecca who'd been encouraging Talia to leave me and start her own company. Janet, you're worth every penny. There's more. I did some digging into Mr. Franklin's background. This isn't his first time running this kind of scam. He's done it in 3 other cities under slightly different names. Always the same pattern. Move to town, set himself up as a business guru, seduce wealthy married women, and disappear with their money. He's done this before? Multiple times. I can get you documentation if you need it. I sat in my truck outside Janet's office, staring at the folder of evidence she'd given me. Photos of Talia and Drew at the motel, financial records showing Drew's debts and his clients' payments, background checks revealing his history of fraud and manipulation. My wife wasn't just cheating on me. She was being conned by a professional grifter who'd probably move on to his next mark as soon as he'd squeezed every dollar he could out of her and her friends. Part of me felt sorry for her, but a bigger part of me was angry that she'd been so willing to throw away our marriage for a man who saw her as nothing more than a paycheck. I drove to Mike's gym and spent an hour working off my frustration on the heavy bag. When I was done, Mike pulled me aside. You look like you got some bad news. Actually, I got some very useful news. The question is what to do with it. What kind of useful? I gave him the basics. The affair, Drew's financial problems, his history of scamming women in other cities. Jesus, Eli, your wife really knows how to pick them. The thing is, I could just take this to a lawyer, file for divorce, and be done with it. Clean, simple, legal. But that doesn't really solve the problem, does it? Drew moves on to his next victim. Talia learns nothing from this, and I'm just another guy who got screwed over by people he trusted. Mike studied my face. What are you thinking? I'm thinking maybe it's time people in this town learned who Drew Franklin really is. And maybe Talia needs to understand what it costs when you betray someone who's been loyal to you for 22 years. That sounds like it could get complicated. Mike, I've been building furniture my whole life. Complicated projects are my specialty. That evening, I started phase 1 of what I was beginning to think of as the Grant Restoration Project. I created a fake email account and sent anonymous tips to the 3 women I knew had given Drew money for his investment opportunities. Rebecca Morrison, Sarah Chen from the country club, and Linda Foster, who ran the flower shop downtown. The emails were simple and factual, just Drew's real background, his history in other cities, and a suggestion that they might want to ask some hard questions about their investments. Then I called my daughter. Dad, is everything okay? You never call me. I need to ask you something, Maddie. Have you noticed anything different about your mom lately? There was a long pause. Different how? I don't know. Happier, more secretive, spending time with new people. Another pause. Dad, are you and Mom having problems? We might be. I'm trying to figure out how serious they are. She's been talking to Drew Franklin a lot, like a lot. She says it's about business, but... She trailed off. But what? But she gets this weird smile when his name comes up, and she's been buying new clothes, getting her hair done more often. She acts like she's dating someone. My 18-year-old daughter had figured out what I'd been too trusting to see for months. Dad, is she cheating on you? I thought about lying, protecting her from the ugly truth. But Maddie was going to college in a few months. She was old enough to handle reality. Yes, sweetheart. I think she is. With Drew? With Drew. She was quiet for a long time. Then, That's really messed up, Dad. I'm sorry. It's not your fault. I know, but I should have said something. I knew something was weird. You're not responsible for your parents' problems, Maddie. But I need you to know that whatever happens next, I love you, and none of this is about you. What's going to happen next? I'm going to fix this situation, the way I fix everything else, carefully, thoroughly, and permanently. After I hung up, I sat in my workshop and looked around at the tools my father had passed down to me, and his father had passed down to him. 3 generations of Grants, building things that lasted, taking pride in quality workmanship. Talia was wrong about my name being cheap. The Grant name meant something in this town. Reliability, integrity, craftsmanship that stood the test of time. It was time to remind everyone of that, including my cheating wife and her con artist boyfriend. I opened my laptop and started working on phase 2 of my plan. By Friday morning, my anonymous emails had started bearing fruit. Rebecca Morrison called Talia at 7 a.m., and I could hear the panic in both their voices through the kitchen wall. "He took the money and disappeared?" Talia was saying. "What do you mean, disappeared?" I poured my coffee slowly, listening to my wife discover that her boyfriend was exactly what I'd known he was, a professional liar. "Have you tried calling him?" Talia continued. "Maybe there's an explanation." There was an explanation, all right. Drew Franklin had gotten word that his marks were asking questions, and he'd done what he always did, packed up and moved on to the next town, the next set of victims. Talia came into the kitchen looking shaken. Her phone was buzzing constantly with calls and texts. "Everything okay?" I asked innocently. "Fine. Just some business complications. Anything I can help with?" She looked at me like I'd offered to perform brain surgery. "I don't think custom furniture skills are going to solve this problem. You'd be surprised what you can fix with the right tools and enough patience." My phone rang before she could respond. It was Janet Walsh. "Mr. Grant, we have a development. Drew Franklin checked out of his apartment yesterday and left town. His car lease was repossessed this morning." "Interesting timing." "It gets better. Apparently, he owes money to some people who aren't as patient as his female clients. Word is he left town to avoid some very serious conversations about debt collection." "So he's gone for good?" "Unless he's stupider than I think he is, yes." I thanked Janet and hung up. Talia was staring at me. "Who was that?" "Work stuff. You know how it is." But she was looking at me differently now, like she was seeing me clearly for the first time in years. Maybe it was the way I was handling her crisis, calm, unruffled, completely in control while her world was falling apart. "Elias, I need to ask you something." "Shoot." "Did you know about Drew and me?" I set down my coffee cup and looked at her directly. "You mean, did I know that you were having an affair with a con artist who's been stealing money from your friends?" "Yeah, Talia. I knew." The color drained from her face. "How long have you known?" "Long enough." "Are you going to divorce me?" It was a fair question, and she deserved an honest answer. "I don't know yet. That depends on what you do next." "What do you mean?" "I mean, you have a choice to make. You can keep pretending that this was all Drew's fault, that you were just an innocent victim of a smooth-talking con man. Or you can take responsibility for the fact that you were willing to throw away 22 years of marriage for a guy who saw you as a paycheck." She sat down heavily at the kitchen table. "I never meant for it to go this far. But it did go this far. You were planning to divorce me and take half of everything I've built. You told him my name sounded cheap. You brought him into our house, into our bedroom. I was confused. He made me feel like I could be more than just a small-town housewife. Talia, you were never just a small-town housewife. You chose to see yourself that way. And you chose to blame me for your choices." My phone buzzed with a text from Mike. "Turn on Channel 7 News, now." I grabbed the remote and switched on the TV. The local news was running a story about a business coach who'd fled town after allegedly defrauding several local women out of thousands of dollars. They had Drew's photo on screen and were asking anyone who'd done business with him to contact the police. "Oh God," Talia whispered. "It gets worse," I said. "Rebecca's going to figure out that you introduced her to Drew. Sarah Chen is going to remember that you recommended his services. Linda Foster is going to realize that you vouched for him when she was hesitant about investing. You did this." She was staring at me with something that might have been respect or might have been fear. "You exposed him." I exposed a criminal who was stealing from people in our community. The fact that he was also sleeping with my wife was just a bonus. "What do you want from me, Elias?" It was a good question. What did I want? Revenge? An apology? For things to go back to the way they were? "I want you to understand something, Talia. The Grant name isn't cheap. It's earned. My grandfather built furniture that's still in people's homes 60 years later. My father built this business from nothing and passed it on to me debt-free. I've spent 22 years building a reputation in this town for quality and reliability. I know that. Do you? Because you were ready to throw all of that away for a guy who was running the same scam he's run in a dozen other towns. You were ready to betray everything we built together for someone who saw you as just another mark." She was crying now, but I wasn't done. "You want to know what cheap looks like? Cheap is having an affair in a roadside motel. Cheap is planning to divorce your husband while he's working 16-hour days to pay for your lifestyle. Cheap is bringing your boyfriend into the house your husband bought and the bed he shares with you. Stop. Cheap is telling people that a name that's meant quality and integrity for 3 generations sounds tacky. That's what cheap looks like, Talia." My phone rang again. This time it was Tom Mitchell, my lawyer. "Eli, I've been watching the news. Are we still proceeding with the divorce papers?" I looked at Talia, sitting at our kitchen table, mascara running down her cheeks, finally understanding the full scope of what she'd almost lost. "Let me call you back, Tom." I hung up and sat down across from my wife. "Here's what's going to happen," I said. "You're going to call Rebecca, Sarah, and Linda. You're going to apologize for introducing them to Drew, and you're going to help them file police reports and insurance claims for their losses. Okay. You're going to close down this event planning business idea and go back to working for someone else until you've proven you can be trusted with responsibility again. That's not fair." "Fair? Talia, I could take everything you own in a divorce. I have photos of you and Drew, financial records of his scams, witness statements from the motel clerk. I could destroy your reputation in this town so completely that you'd have to move somewhere else and start over with nothing." She stared at me. "But you're not going to do that. Not if you make the right choices going forward." "Why?" "Because despite everything you've done, despite every way you've betrayed me and disrespected our marriage, you're still my wife. And the Grant name means keeping your commitments, even when other people don't keep theirs." She reached across the table and took my hand. "I'm sorry, Elias. I'm so sorry. I know you are. The question is whether you're sorry you did it or just sorry you got caught." "Both," she said, and for the first time in months, I thought she might be telling me the truth. "Then we'll figure out how to fix this, together. But Talia, if you ever betray me like this again, I won't be so generous with second chances." "I understand." "Good. Now go call Rebecca. She's probably wondering how she's going to explain to her husband that she gave $15,000 to a con man." As Talia went to make her calls, I sat in my kitchen and felt something I hadn't experienced in a long time: respect for the man I'd become. Not the pushover who'd let his wife walk all over him for years, but the careful, patient craftsman who'd handled this crisis the way he handled everything else, with precision, planning, and a commitment to quality results. The Grant name wasn't cheap, and anyone who thought otherwise had just learned a very expensive lesson. 6 months later, I was putting the finishing touches on a dining room set for the Hendersons when Talia walked into my workshop. She'd been doing that more often lately, not to complain about sawdust or noise, but just to watch me work. "That's beautiful," she said, running her hand along the smooth cherry wood surface of the table I'd just completed. "Thanks. It'll last them 50 years if they take care of it." "Like your grandfather's table?" I looked up, surprised. Talia had never shown interest in my family's furniture before. "Exactly like my grandfather's table." She was quiet for a moment, watching me pack up my tools. "I've been thinking about what you said, about the Grant name meaning something." "Yeah? I want to take it. Legally, I mean. Change my name from Sloan to Grant." I stopped what I was doing and looked at her. "Why?" "Because I was wrong. About what it means, about what you've built here. I spent so long thinking I needed to be someone different, someone more exciting, that I forgot how to appreciate what I already had." It was a nice gesture, but I'd learned to be cautious about Talia's grand pronouncements. What brought this on? Rebecca's divorce was finalized last week. She lost the house, half her savings, and her husband won't let her see the kids without supervision. All because she was chasing some fantasy of a different life. Rebecca Morrison had not handled the Drew Franklin scandal well. When her husband found out she'd given $15,000 to a con man she was having an affair with, he'd filed for divorce immediately. Unlike me, he hadn't been interested in second chances. "I'm sorry to hear that." "Are you?" "Because you could have done the same thing to me. Everyone would have understood if you had. But I didn't." "Why not?" I thought about that question. 6 months ago, I'd been angry enough to destroy Talia's life completely. I'd had the evidence, the legal grounds, and the moral justification to take everything and leave her with nothing. "Because that's not who I am," I said finally. "The Grant name means building things that last, not tearing things down out of spite." "Even when you'd been betrayed?" "Especially then. Anyone can be destructive when they're angry. It takes real skill to repair something that's been damaged." She smiled, and for the first time in years, it looked genuine. "So what do you think? About the name change?" "I think if you want to be a Grant, you have to earn it. The same way I did, and my father did, and his father did." "How do I do that?" "By proving that you understand what the name means. Quality work. Keeping your commitments. Building something that lasts." She nodded seriously. "I can do that. We'll see." That evening, we had dinner together for the first time in months. Not the silent, tense meals we'd been sharing, but an actual conversation about our days, our plans, our future. "Maddie called," Talia said. "She's coming home for spring break next week." "How's she doing at college?" "Good, really good. She said to tell you she's taking a business class and learning about the value of established brand names." I laughed. "Smart kid. She gets that from you. She gets a lot of good things from both of us." "Even after everything that happened?" "Especially after everything that happened. She got to see how people handle crisis, both the wrong way and the right way. That's a valuable education." Talia reached across the table and took my hand. "I know I don't deserve another chance, Elias, but I'm grateful you gave me one anyway. Don't make me regret it." "I won't." Later that night, I was in my workshop, cleaning and organizing my tools the way my father had taught me. Everything in its place, everything maintained and ready for the next project. My phone rang. It was Janet Walsh. "Mr. Grant, I thought you'd want to know. Drew Franklin was arrested in Phoenix yesterday. Apparently he tried to run the same scam on a police captain's wife." Good timing on his part. "The FBI is putting together a case against him for wire fraud. They might want to talk to you and your wife as witnesses. We'll cooperate however we can. There's something else. The other women he scammed in previous cities, they're organizing a class action lawsuit. If it's successful, your wife's friends might recover some of their losses." "That's good news." "Mr. Grant, can I ask you something? Why didn't you press charges yourself? You had more evidence than anyone." It was a fair question. Because I got what I wanted without involving the courts. Drew's out of our lives, my wife learned a valuable lesson, and our marriage is stronger than it's been in years. That's an unusual outcome for cases like this. I'm an unusual guy. After I hung up, I sat in my workshop and looked around at the space that had been my sanctuary for over 20 years. The tools my grandfather had passed down, the workbench my father had built, the projects that bore the Grant name and would outlast all of us. Talia had been wrong about that name being cheap, but she'd been right about one thing. I was going somewhere in life, not to some flashy new destination, but deeper into the values and traditions that had always defined me. The Grant name meant something in this town. It meant quality, reliability, and the kind of integrity that couldn't be bought or faked or conned away by smooth-talking strangers. And now, finally, my wife understood that too. 6 months after I'd discovered her affair, Talia Grant, not Sloan, but Grant, was working to rebuild the trust she'd broken and the marriage she'd nearly destroyed. It wasn't easy work, and it wasn't fast work, but then again, the best projects never were. Like my grandfather always said, anything worth building is worth building right. And anything worth building right is worth the time it takes to do it properly. I turned off the lights in my workshop and headed into the house, where my wife was waiting for me. Not because she had to be, but because she wanted to be. Because she'd finally learned the difference between what looked good and what actually was good. The Grant name wasn't cheap, and neither was the man who carried it.